March 1999, Sydney, Australia. A routine helicopter tour lifts off into a clear blue sky. In the passenger seat is a quiet woman with auburn hair, 4 shopping bags, and a thick Eastern European accent. There is absolutely nothing suspicious about her, but exactly 7 minutes into the flight, the illusion shatters. She reaches into a shopping bag, presses a loaded pistol directly against the pilot's temple, and delivers a chilling command. "Don't move. Take me to the prison." Minutes later, this civilian helicopter drops straight into the exercise yard of Silverwater Maximum Security Correctional Center. Under the shocked gaze of 200 inmates, the aircraft takes 3 direct bullets from guard towers, absorbs the crossfire, and somehow escapes back into the sky with one of Australia's most heavily guarded prisoners. But the most terrifying detail of this airborne heist isn't the escape itself. The woman holding the gun is not a cartel mercenary. She has never committed a single crime in her life. She is a librarian, a PhD candidate, a former judge's associate. How did a respectable academic execute the most audacious prison break in Australian history? And how exactly did she mastermind a maximum security extraction using nothing but a stack of borrowed library books? Lucy Dudenko, or Lucy, originated from the Soviet industrial complex. Born in Kemerovo in 1958, she emerged from a geography that manufactured coal, severe temperatures, and citizens engineered for absolute endurance. She was not merely a survivor of this harsh environment, she was a master of structural systems. She mastered multiple languages, she studied complex legal frameworks, she operated as a judicial associate. This was a highly analytical position, requiring the retention of massive procedural data and a strict zero-tolerance policy for errors. She consumed information with mechanical efficiency. She finished every single project she initiated. In the late 1980s, she relocated to Australia. She adopted the anglicised name Lucy. She secured a position as a librarian in Sydney. She operated within a successful, highly conventional domestic structure. Observers categorized her as quiet, organized, and exceptionally competent. She possessed a carefully constructed, perfectly stable existence. In 1995, this entire architecture collapsed. She encountered John Killick. He was 53 years old. He possessed a lengthy history of forceful asset acquisition. He was a career bank robber. However, he operated with a strict personal code. He utilized psychological intimidation, but he consistently avoided inflicting physical trauma upon facility employees. He possessed intense charisma. He quoted classical literature. He analyzed philosophical concepts. He was fundamentally incompatible with Lucy's methodical, stable reality. She experienced absolute, undeniable fascination. Within months, Lucy dismantled her previous life. She abandoned her domestic stability. She relocated. She eventually shared a residence with Killick's estranged wife. 2 vastly different women sharing domestic infrastructure, waiting for the exact same individual. This was not a temporary lapse in judgment. This was a methodical, permanent recalibration of her reality. She traded absolute certainty for absolute chaos. In 1996, the judicial system processed Killick for his previous activities. Authorities transferred him to the Silverwater Maximum Security Complex. They placed him in a cell with a man named Paul Bennett. Bennett possessed a private aviation license. He understood the operational logistics of Sydney's civilian airspace. He knew the flight paths. He knew the equipment. Killick absorbed this data. Information in confinement functions as a primary currency. During a visitation session, Killick presented a proposition to Lucy. He presented a geographical problem. Silverwater possessed layered perimeters. It utilized razor wire. It maintained strict vehicle checkpoints. There existed no path through the concrete walls. There existed no path under the earth. Only one trajectory remained completely unguarded: upward. The execution required an external operative. It required an individual with a pristine civilian record. It required a mind capable of analyzing minute operational details. It required a person willing to sacrifice their entire existence for an incarcerated man. Killick identified Lucy as the sole candidate. She required 6 months to deliver an answer. The answer arrived in the form of a heavily annotated binder. Lucy approached the extraction as a research anomaly. She acquired aviation publications. She collected promotional material from regional helicopter operators. She procured motion pictures featuring aerial sequences, analyzing the footage frame by frame. She utilized her library clearance to borrow technical flight manuals. She absorbed the mechanical limitations of rotorcraft. She even purchased a singular flight lesson using physical currency, extracting the necessary practical knowledge before vanishing from the flight school. Her preparation was total. She identified the critical vulnerability. Sydney was preparing for the upcoming Olympic Games. Civilian helicopters conducted daily sightseeing operations over the construction zones, mere kilometers from the correctional facility. The airspace was heavily congested. A tourist flight would blend seamlessly into the atmospheric noise. She selected the Bell 47G. The machine was archaic, small and slow, however it possessed extreme maneuverability. It could descend into confined concrete spaces. It was the precise tool required for the operation. The primary obstacle was synchronization. The facility's yard schedules fluctuated unpredictably. The precise window where Killick stood outside while a helicopter hovered above measured exactly 5 to 10 minutes. The solution relied on contraband technology. Killick possessed a concealed mobile communication device. Upon entering the exercise yard, he would initiate a signal. Lucy would already occupy the aircraft. She would dictate the descent. The final variable was pilot compliance. Killick arranged for the external delivery of 2 deactivated instruments. They possessed the physical geometry of actual sidearms, but lacked internal firing mechanisms. They could not discharge projectiles. They could not cause physical harm. They functioned strictly as psychological tools of persuasion. The calculation was specific. Lucy possessed the visual threat necessary to command the aircraft, but lacked the mechanical ability to accidentally end a human life. March 25th, 1999. The sky presented optimal visibility. Lucy arrived at the airfield. She carried bags containing the deactivated instruments, physical restraints, a geographical map, and civilian clothing for Killick. She boarded the Bell 47G. The pilot initiated the standard sightseeing trajectory. 7 minutes airborne, the communication device vibrated. Killick transmitted the signal. He was in the yard. Lucy retrieved the psychological tool. She presented the metallic object to the pilot. She commanded a deviation from the authorized flight path. She ordered a descent into the restricted airspace of the correctional facility. The pilot, operating under extreme duress, complied with the directive. Below, 200 incarcerated individuals observed a rotorcraft descending from an unauthorized angle. Killick stood waiting. As the machine approached the turf, the surrounding population parted. They remained silent. They initiated no alarms. They formed a clear corridor for the extraction. Killick crossed the grass. He entered the cabin. Security personnel engaged the aircraft. They discharged their service equipment. 3 distinct projectiles impacted the machine. 1 severed a structural strut. 1 compromised the tail section. 1 struck the primary rotor. The machine vibrated violently. The pilot absorbed the impact and maintained vertical thrust. The perimeter vanished beneath them. The evasion immediately failed. Lucy directed the pilot to a designated park in northern Sydney. She secured the pilot to a tree, ensuring he remained physically unharmed. The fugitives moved toward their staged transport vehicle. A fatal logistical error emerged. The vehicle keys remained in an apartment drawer kilometers away. They intercepted a passing civilian motorist. They displayed the psychological tool. They acquired transport. They departed the area and released the driver unharmed shortly after. However, the delay was catastrophic. Within hours, authorities established nationwide blockades. The media christened her Red Lucy. The pursuit commenced. For 45 days, they maintained constant motion. They utilized aliases. They rotated accommodations. They operated exclusively in physical currency. Killick understood the architecture of a fugitive existence. Lucy did not. A mind structured for absolute control struggled in a life devoid of endpoints. There was no measurable success. There was only the next temporary shelter. She experienced profound psychological exhaustion. On May 5th, 1999, they secured a caravan on the western edge of Sydney. Lucy stepped into the small kitchenette. She prepared a simple meal. She desired domestic stillness over constant evasion. 3 days later, surveillance identified their location. Authorities breached the perimeter at dawn. Killick offered no physical resistance. Lucy sat at a small table, fully dressed, perfectly calm. She extended her wrists. The most complex aerial extraction in the nation's history concluded because the architect simply wished to rest. The judicial system assigned severe consequences. Lucy accepted every charge without contest. The court mandated a 10-year sentence. Killick received an additional 23 years. Authorities placed them in separate high-security facilities, separated by vast distances. Distance did not immediately sever the connection. They exchanged thousands of physical letters over the subsequent years. The meticulous focus Lucy applied to the extraction, she now applied to paper correspondence. Then, the psychological trajectory shifted. Lucy embraced religious faith. The transformation was profound and absolute. The woman who engineered the aerial breach ceased to exist. Through a final, precise letter, she terminated the relationship. She assigned no blame. She expressed no regret. She simply stated that her new identity could no longer coexist with her past actions. She severed the bond. She stopped writing. The architect executed a flawless surgical exit from the exact individual the entire operation was built to save. Authorities granted Lucy parole in 2006. She reclaimed her civilian status. She returned to library work. She enforced an absolute information embargo. She rejected every media request. She declined every financial offer for her narrative. She disappeared into the quiet rhythm of ordinary existence. Killick regained his freedom a decade later. He authored publications. He granted interviews. He publicly declared his enduring affection. The silence from Lucy remained absolute and unbroken. The operation stands as an undeniable technical triumph. The aircraft landed, the target boarded, the perimeter was breached. Yet the cost was total. She surrendered 7 years of her freedom. She sacrificed the relationship with her family. She ultimately discarded the man for whom the entire blueprint was designed. The plan functioned perfectly. The life it was intended to secure did not survive the impact.